Do you want to find happiness and success when everything around you is changing? Well, then stay with us today on Deeper Living.
From coast to coast across North America, this is Deeper Living, bringing the inspirational marketplace to your front door. We exist to bring you the latest and greatest from authors, artists, and artisans around the world. You're going to love this.
Welcome to Deeper Living. I'm your host, Ginger Garrett, and today we are joined by author Dick Stieglitz. Hello, welcome.
Great to be here, Ginger.
And you have written a book called Taming the Dragons of Change. And we have so much to get into. Your book is about, finding your comfort level with change.
10 tips for achieving success and happiness when everything around us is changing, which of course completely describes our world today.
Absolutely. Well, first, tell me a little bit about your background. Have you always been a writer?
No, this is something that's fairly new to me, at least non-technical writing. I've started out with a PhD in nuclear engineering, so I started by writing a thesis way back then.
Oh boy,
that was a long time ago. A big one, right. And actually, that's when I had to actually type it myself. We didn't have computers back then.
Wow, okay.
7 times.
So a nuclear engineer,
Yes.
and now you're writing a book on change. How did we get to this point?
Oh, that's a long story. We'll get into that. But basically, my career has taken some dramatic changes. The reason that I got a PhD in nuclear engineering is that I always wanted to be a naval officer in submarines.
Oh, okay.
When the Nautilus first was on TV, I was a little boy, and Underway on Nuclear Power was fascinating to me. So I actually went to get a PhD for that purpose. And I interviewed with Admiral Rickover when I was about 23 or 24 years old, refueled nuclear submarines, and then the Navy was going to move me to Washington. I had been in the Navy for 10 years, and I didn't want to go to Washington.
Okay, where were you when this happened?
In Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
Good question. As the world changed, I sent my resume all over the place, and I got an interview scheduled in Washington, D.C. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't want to go to Washington. That's the reason I'm leaving the Navy. She said, oh, go to free trip and see your brother who lived in that area. So I did, and that was in 1976. And I asked for what I thought was a ridiculous salary, $30,000 a year for a PhD, 10 years in the Navy. And the vice president said yes, so I moved to Washington.
Wow.
I've been there ever since.
Okay, well that is a big change.
Big change.
And were you comfortable with that? Had you always been comfortable with change, or it had always been kind of a sticking point in your life?
The only changes I was comfortable is that I made other people change.
Oh, I'm comfortable with those too.
I'm very comfortable with making other people change.
So you began to realize then that you didn't have a comfort level when things were out of your control.
No, I was very uncomfortable, and I would work hard and long and strong to be sure I got things back in control.
Yeah. Okay, so you end up in Washington, D.C., and what next?
Well, I did some consulting work in Navy stuff, and then I left there because I was bored, and I went to a small computer firm. And I didn't like that, so I went back to McDonnell Douglas, and then I decided that I didn't like working for a big company, so I started my own company, and that was in 1984. And we started out again in submarine engineering, and then the Berlin Wall came down. And we stopped building submarines. So we had to change the whole direction of the company. And of course, at that time, which is the late 80s now, early 90s, computers were a big thing.
Right.
So we moved our expertise into computers. And that went great until the Navy decided that they were going to issue a big contract for $8 billion to EDS.
Oh.
And all of our work went away again.
Oh. So change has been a constant in your life.
Absolutely.
And you weren't dealing well with it if it wasn't self-initiated change.
Yes.
And you started to learn, were you cognizant that you were learning about the process of change, or it was all sort of happening in the back of your mind?
Well, it was kind of 2 concurrent paths. I've kind of so far just described the professional path. And then we moved the company into change management, which paradoxically is very stable business. But there were some things happening in my personal life at the same time that made me aware that some of my behaviors probably weren't working as well in my relationships as they could.
Okay, so tell me about some of the things that were starting to happen and you realized you needed to change the way you handled change.
Well, the epiphany for me about change happened when the Chicago police called and they had arrested my 22-year-old daughter for grand theft auto.
Wow.
Yes. She had stolen my wife's car, and this was the latest incident in a series of these kinds of things that were related to her drug and alcohol abuse. So my wife and I flew out to Chicago and visited my daughter in jail. Only time I've been in jail in my entire life.
Wow, what a shock.
What a shock. And then we went to the courtroom, and we sat with the state's attorney, and my daughter was with the public defender. And I sat there, and I got so angry. How could she do this? How could she do this to me? I gave her everything she could possibly want. And then a small voice said to me, Dick, what did you do that caused your family to be here? And that's when I knew I had to change.
Well, that is a perfect point to end on just for a minute. We're going to go to break. When we come back, more with author Dick Stieglitz. Welcome back to Deeper Living. We're talking today with author Dick Stieglitz, and you were telling us about a light bulb moment you had sitting in a very unlikely place. So pick up that story for us.
Yes, in the Chicago courtroom, very angry at my daughter for being there for the Grand Theft Auto. And that's when, as I said, the small voice said to me, Dick, what have you done that contributed to your family being here?
Wow.
That's the part that you can change, is what that voice told me.
Wow.
So I committed in that moment that I was going to change me. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Didn't even know. But I've been a student of change ever since, and that was 14 years ago now.
And what were some of the hardest lessons for you to learn in handling change?
Giving up control when people didn't do things the way I thought they should be done.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yes, letting things go.
Okay. So you have accumulated so many lessons, and I know in your book you give 10 tips for achieving happiness and success when everything around you is changing. Walk me through a few of those 10 tips.
Well, the 10 tips are actually divided into 3 areas. There are 3 tips on how we think about change. And those 3 tips are be happy today, live in abundance, and stretch for tomorrow.
Okay.
Then there are 3 tips on how we treat people, on relationships. And those 3 tips are give love freely, be open and honest, and just say yes.
Oh, I love that one. Okay.
And the last 4 tips are about the way we make decisions and take action or not.
Okay.
And those are about personal responsibility, clear choices, daring to dream, and then sharing our dreams.
Well, in that first set, walk me through. Now, you say live in abundance. What does that have to do with change? Help me understand.
An interesting reaction that many people have when something changes is they immediately go to the scarcity dragon.
The scarcity dragon, what's that?
I'm not going to have as much after this change as I had before the change.
Oh, okay.
Particularly when things happen in our job situations.
Right. Things that we're not in control of.
Right.
Okay.
The company's just been sold. They're introducing a brand new computer system and a new way of doing business. Everybody wonders, am I going to do as well after the change as I did before the change? That's the scarcity dragon talking. It's the fear. The fear that I'm not going to do as well.
So you encourage people to live in abundance and to tame that dragon by just envisioning good things coming out of change?
Opportunities.
Okay.
Opportunities come out of change.
And what about the tough changes, the changes that I didn't initiate, I don't want, and they really are, they look like nothing but terrible things ahead. I mean, how do I deal with the really negative stuff?
Some of the biggest opportunities in my life have come dressed in the ugly rags of failure.
Oh, yeah?
For example, I was a naval officer, lieutenant commander, equivalent of a major, and I was passed over for promotion.
Ooh.
Okay. Remember, I got a PhD because I wanted to be a naval officer in submarines, and essentially the Navy said they don't want me anymore.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yes, that was terrible. At least that's what I thought at the time. But
And
that's when I started to look for the job, and I moved to Washington. And learned the things I needed to do to start a company and to build a company, and I wouldn't be here today if the Navy didn't pass me over.
Wow.
So as angry as I was about that, and wondered, oh no, what do I do now, right? The scarcity dragon, it was one of the biggest opportunities I've had in my entire life.
So living in abundance is also about taking a long-range view of change.
Yes.
Okay.
What are the opportunities that are in this change?
And in that second set of points that you were talking about, you say love
Give
freely.
love freely.
Give love freely. And how does that relate with change?
Again, it goes back to the scarcity kind of thinking. We make judgments about people. This person qualifies for my love, conditional love. I love you if you'll do this. What we're actually doing when we do that, and I did that with my daughters, my two daughters, I would love them as a way of manipulating them. And when I wasn't happy with what they were doing, like my daughter's drug and alcohol, I wasn't happy with that addiction, of course, as any parent would be. But I would withhold my love then. And frankly, that doesn't work. What brought my daughter back into the family, and I need to make the point that she's a wonderful mom and been in clean and sober for a long time now.
Wow, that's great.
Yes. So, but what worked in our relationship was giving love freely. I love you even if you have those problems. I don't like those problems, and I love you. That's what giving love freely is about.
And isn't that really a way of inviting change into your life? I'm going to love you no matter what happens?
No matter what happens, exactly.
Yeah. So
Particularly works well with children.
Yeah. And so you're starting to find, through this process, you're helping people find a comfort level with change. That even if I don't initiate it, I can open myself up by loving freely.
Yes.
Okay. And tell me, in this last group of points, tell me about daring to dream. And dreams, that involves change. Isn't that a little scary?
Yes, but it's also very exciting. One of my favorite stories about daring to dream is President Kennedy in 1961 telling the whole world, we're going to put a man on the moon in this decade and bring him back safely. And the story goes that his science advisor went after that worldwide speech. His science advisor said, Mr. President, we can't do that. We don't have the fuel, we don't have the material, we don't have the people, we don't have the money. And President Kennedy said, well, now you have a list of things to do. And the rest is history, of course.
Fantastic. Well, you've got this list of 10 tips. Tell me about some of the changes you've seen in people's lives as they started to apply this wisdom.
The one that I get a lot of positive feedback, and you even reacted to it, was just say yes. It seems that our normal reaction in a relationship when somebody asks us something is to say no or let me think about it.
Right.
Okay. Well, let me think about it actually feels like no. Okay, so and anytime somebody asks me for something and I say yes or no, the relationship is never the same after that.
Oh, this is great stuff, and we are going to be right back on Deeper Living. Deeper Living. We are talking with author Dick Stieglitz today about the uncomfortable process of change. And you were telling me about one of the principles, which is just say yes.
Yes, that's one of the tips.
Let's get into that.
That's one of the tips about improving our relationships. The first lesson I had on that was when I was 8 years old. I went to my aunt and uncle's 50th wedding anniversary. Now, my Aunt May was about 6'2", and her personality matched. So with the complete innocence of an 8-year-old, I said to Uncle Bill, out loud so lots of people could hear it, Uncle Bill, how did you stay married to Aunt May for 50 years?
No.
And his answer was, I just say yes. And then we worked the details out later.
And that became a foundational life principle for you.
Well, yes, as I learned adopted in a relationship. On a professional sense, you know, I was president of my own company, and it was in the early 90s that one of my young techies came to me and said, Dick, I think we ought to put up a website. I'm talking like 1991, 1992 now. And my first question, of course, was how much is it going to cost? And he said, $125,000.
Oh, okay.
You know, and our company was like $2.5 or $3 million at the time, and my first reaction was, heck no, we're not going to do that. I didn't even know what a website was. And instead of saying no, though, I said, well, why would we want to do that? And he said, well, it would show our customers that we can do it. Our staff will get training in how to do it, and we can make a business out of it.
Wow.
And that made sense. So I said, okay, let's go ahead. The 125,000 became 150.
Oh, of course.
But it also developed into a very lucrative line of business.
Wow. So you just said yes, and then great things happened.
Yes.
Well, walk me back through. Now, we were talking about sort of the low point, the rock bottom of your life, which was sitting in a courtroom when your daughter was being tried with Grand Theft Auto, and you had this light bulb moment. How did you get to the moment where you realized, I have done it, I understand the process of change, and I am ready to pass these lessons on? What was that moment like for you when you knew you were ready?
Well, I don't know that I've learned all I need to know about change even yet. But I knew I was on the right track when probably 6 or 7 years after that incident in the courtroom, my daughter put her arms around me and said, thank you for loving me, Dad.
Wow.
I knew I was on the right track.
Wow. And you know, so many times when we think about lifestyle changes and learning to be comfortable with change, we're really thinking about what's in it for me. And to have feedback like that, to realize that you changed her life by changing your own.
Yes.
Oh, well, that was a great moment for you?
That was a fantastic moment. Yes.
And so you began writing down these lessons when? All along the way or right about that time?
No, actually, when my first grandson, we have 4 grandsons that are 13, 6, 5, and 3. Okay. 2 by each of our 2 daughters. And when my first grandson was about 3 years old, I wanted to write some stories down about things that had happened in my life that caused me to be the way that I am. So I had written maybe 20 of these, 25 of these, and I gave them to my daughter. Actually, it's the same daughter we've been talking about. And she said, Dad, this is good stuff. Lots of people would like to read these. And she said, you know, they're really stories about how you think, how you treat people, and how you take action. So she was the one that gave the book the structure.
Wow.
So that's when I started actively writing a book.
Well, you have really come full circle in your relationship with her and in the way you process change then.
Absolutely.
And tell me, do you go around the country speaking on this? How have people been responding?
The stories are poignant. As I told my low point, people can relate to that. And then to make a good thing out of a bad thing, I call it karmic alchemy.
Karmic alchemy.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, making gold out of base metals is what they did in medieval times. But this is making a new life out of what at first we view to be problems. Okay.
So for our viewers out there that are going through a lot of change, maybe a painful divorce or maybe problems with their children, and they want something right now that they can begin to do to make it just a little bit better, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say get a copy of the book. I find people look at sections of the book depending on what the challenges are. The 2 particular situations that you described are relationship challenges. kind of thing, rather than decision challenges, which would be action. So in that case, take a look at just give love freely, being open and honest about how we feel, and saying yes.
Okay. And what about for someone who maybe has just lost a job? Where would they start?
Again, that's in the opportunity section.
Okay.
One of the statistics that not many people are aware of is over 70% of the new businesses start because their founder is unemployed.
Oh, wow.
Over 70%. Okay, so getting fired or laid off or whatever happens in a job may be an opportunity, just like essentially the Navy fired me, didn't they?
Right.
So that could be a great opportunity.
Wow, well, that's a great example of change bringing opportunity.
Right. Dare to dream would be the tip on that one.
Well, this is such good stuff, and I know our viewers are going to be so encouraged. You can get more information on the book at our website at DeeperLiving.com, and we will be right back.
Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights. From the Father of lights.
Welcome back to Deeper Living. Today we've been talking with author Dick Stieglitz about the process of change, and you were telling us that you ran a business coaching the government on handling change. Is that right?
Yes.
And how did you use your 10 tips in a federal government setting?
Okay. The 10 tips were actually the difference between success and failure on multi-million-dollar projects.
Wow.
We competed with large consulting firms, Booz Allen, Bearing Point, Accenture, those kind of companies, IBM, and beat them. And the way that we beat them is by telling the senior government executives that we will deal with the resistance to change. It's how your people react to change that will determine the success or the failure of the project, not whether you buy a big enough computer. Kind of thing. So we would go into projects and begin to address the people that were affected by the change and help them overcome their dragons, their resistance to the change.
And let's talk a little bit about the title. Why did you name it Taming the Dragons? Because dragons are such a fierce image. And why do you call change dragon?
Well, I think that's a personal thing. Maybe my maleness is showing too. It seems like I relate in the courtroom. My first instinct was to be angry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right.
Makes
sense.
So
that's where the dragon mode came out. The fire breathing.
Sure.
I can breathe fire pretty good.
I'm sure. So dragons is about our emotional reaction to change. But you don't say to slay the dragons. You say to tame them.
Earlier you asked me, when did you know that you had change? And I think I answered that I'm not sure I have it yet. And that has to do with taming. Originally it was the working title of the book was Slay the Dragons of Change. And one of the ones that I thought I had, the abundance thing, I thought I had that one down pat, and all of a sudden a new change came along, and it reared its head again, and I had to kind of regroup. So we can tame the dragons because change is forever.
Right.
So the dragons are immortal.
Oh, okay. So it really is about just learning to have a certain comfort level with change, learning to leave the door open for it.
Yes.
Okay.
New changes are coming, Ginger.
And how do you continually incorporate these tips into your everyday life? Do you have it down pat? You just keep reminding yourself?
Well, it turns out that in my family and my friends, we actually talk in terms of the tip. I invited my son-in-law to visit with me down at the Yankee fantasy baseball camp this
Wow,
summer.
how
He hates
fun.
the Yankees.
Oh, no.
So I said, Scotty, I have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but you're going to have to do tip 6.
Yeah.
Just say yes. So he's going down there with a week to be, and he's going to have to wear a Yankee uniform.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
but he had to say yes.
Big change for him.
Yeah. Yes.
So you talk in terms of the tips. Do you keep them posted anywhere in the house? 'Cause to
No,
me,
we
I
don't
think-
have that. We
Yeah?
haven't gone that far yet.
Okay, well, you probably know them down pat.
We do, and so did the family, and we talk that way. And when an argument comes up, okay, we know we're probably off track in one of the areas.
Wow, you know, I didn't think about that, but really conflict is all about change.
It's all about change, yes.
Okay, and so you're able to use these tips not only in your business and in your workplace, you're also able to use them in your family life.
Absolutely.
Wow, okay. Well, tell me another story before we close. What do you think has been the most profound change you've seen in your life since beginning this project?
The peace that it's brought into my life, and also the excitement of living.
Wow.
Things that used to depress me,
Yeah.
now I look for the opportunity, I look for the silver lining, and they actually excite me and stimulating, and they make me
Yeah.
curious. So life is a whole lot more fun.
Wow, what a great note to end the show on. Please visit us at our website at DeeperLiving.com, and thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.